Hello, my good friends. How are you today? God bless you all. Today we meet Marissa Lopez, a poor single mother who swipes her last dollar to buy coffee for a stranger at a Bakersfield McDonald's, a rude guy in a beat-up truck. Soon the story goes viral. 2 million eyes follow her kindness. But when that stranger, Nate Carver, a quiet oil millionaire, tracks her down, and what lies ahead? Comment where you're watching, subscribe, and enjoy this heartwarming story. The Bakersfield night was thick with heat and dust, the kind that stuck to your skin and made every breath feel gritty. Marissa Lopez leaned against the counter at the McDonald's off Highway 99, her sneakers squeaking on the chipped tile floor as she shifted her weight. Her uniform, a faded red polo and black visor, clung to her back, damp from 8 hours of flipping burgers and forcing smiles. The clock above the fry station blinked 11:45 p.m. 15 minutes till her shift ended, and her legs ached like they'd been poured full of concrete. She rubbed her neck, muttering under her breath, "Hang in there, girl. Just a little longer." The place was quiet now, just the hum of the soda machine and the occasional rumble of a semi-truck rolling by outside. Most nights after 10 were dead. Maybe a few oil workers grabbing coffee or truckers hauling produce down the 99. But tonight had been steady, a stream of tired faces barking orders through the drive-thru. Marissa's hands still smelled like fryer grease and ketchup, and her bank card, tucked in her apron pocket, had exactly $14 left till payday on Friday. Rent was due in 5 days, $700, and Miguel's sneakers had a hole big enough to see his sock through. Zoe's asthma meds were running low, too. Another $50 hit she couldn't dodge much longer. She glanced at the photo taped inside her locker door, cracked open just enough to see Zoe, 9, with her gap-toothed grin, and Miguel, 7, peering through his too big glasses. They were with Mrs. Ortiz next door tonight, probably sprawled on her lumpy couch, fast asleep under a quilt. "For you two," Marissa whispered, shutting the locker with a soft clank. She'd been on her own since their dad split 4 years back, leaving her with a newborn, a toddler, and a stack of bills she'd never climbed out from under. "Order up!" Jake hollered from the grill, sliding a paper bag across the counter. Marissa grabbed it, 2 cheeseburgers, medium fries, and handed it to a bleary-eyed trucker in a flannel shirt. "Have a good one," she said, her voice autopilot smooth, barely audible over the hiss of the fryer. He grunted, shuffled out, and the bell above the door jingled into silence. "Hey, Mar, we got a car at the drive-thru," Alicia called from the back, her voice muffled as she headed for the bathroom. "Can you take it?" "Yeah, sure," Marissa said, tugging her headset on, the plastic digging into her ear. "Welcome to McDonald's. How can I help you tonight?" A low, tired voice crackled through. Black coffee, large, and a sausage McMuffin. That's it." "Will that complete your order, sir?" "Yeah, thanks. That'll be $8.50. Please drive to the first window." Marissa punched it in, glancing out as a beat-up Chevy pickup rolled up, its faded blue paint scratched to hell and back. Not the usual rig. She was used to dented Fords and rusty Dodges at this hour, not something that looked like it had been parked in a barn for a decade. The window slid down and she nearly dropped the card reader. The guy inside wasn't some grizzled trucker. He was older, maybe 50, with graying stubble and a worn Carhartt jacket that smelled faintly of motor oil. His eyes were sunken, tired, like he hadn't slept in days, but there was something sharp in them, something that didn't fit the truck or the late-night McMuffin run. "Good evening," she said, keeping it steady, handing him the receipt pad. "That's $8.50. He reached for his back pocket, then froze, patting his jeans, his front pockets, the dash. "Damn it," he muttered, digging through the center console, loose change rattling. "I must have left my wallet at the yard. Been running numbers all day. Brains fried." He looked up, sheepish. "Sorry, kid. I'll have to skip it. Didn't mean to waste your time." Marissa hesitated, watching him slump back in the seat, rubbing his face with a calloused hand. She'd seen that look before, bone-tired, stretched thin. She'd felt it too, those nights she'd counted quarters at the gas station, praying the pump wouldn't cut off. "Hold on," she said quick before she could second-guess it. "I got it." She pulled her bank card from her apron, the plastic scratched and faded, and swiped it through the machine. $8.50 gone, leaving her with $5.50 till Friday. "You don't have to do that," he said, sitting up, surprised. "It's fine," she said, forcing a smile, her stomach twisting a little. "We all forget stuff sometimes. Just eat and get some rest, okay?" She turned, grabbed his coffee and McMuffin from the warmer, and handed the bag through the window. "Here you go." He took it, slow, peering at her name tag, Marissa L., then at her face. "Marissa, huh? That's real kind of you. What's your last name?" "Lopez," she said, shrugging, not sure why he cared. "No big deal. Drive safe." He nodded, a faint smile cracking through the exhaustion. "Thanks, Marissa Lopez. I owe you one." The Chevy rumbled off, taillights fading into the dark, and Marissa let out a breath she hadn't known she was holding. She didn't think much of it, didn't have time to. She clocked out at midnight, caught the late bus home, and slipped into her apartment, the lock sticking like always. Mrs. Ortiz was snoring on the couch, the kids tangled in blankets beside her. "Thanks, Mrs." "Oh," Marissa whispered, nudging her awake. "They good?" "Angels, like always," Mrs. Ortiz mumbled, shuffling out. Marissa peeked at Zoe and Miguel, him with his glasses crooked, her clutching a stuffed bear, then sank onto a kitchen chair, counting out bus fare and lunch money for tomorrow. $5.50 left. She'd skip breakfast, stretch the cereal for the kids. It'd be tight, but they'd scrape by. They always did. Her mom, Elena, had taught her that. Help where you can, even when it's hard. She didn't regret swiping the card. Not really. Across town, Nathan Carver, Nate, to the handful who still called him that, sat in his office at Carver Oil, a squat brick building off Rosedale Highway. The place smelled like diesel and old coffee, papers stacked high on his desk, drilling permits, payroll, bills he'd ignored too long. He was 50, broad but slumping, his flannel shirt wrinkled from a day that had stretched into night. The Chevy was parked out back, his yard truck for late runs, not the Lexus he kept garaged at home. He'd built Carver Oil from a single rig to a small fleet over 20 years, a millionaire on paper, but you wouldn't know it from the cracked leather chair he sank into or the empty house he avoided going back to. His phone buzzed. A text from his accountant. "Call me. Taxes overdue." He ignored it, swiping to YouTube instead, where a thumbnail caught his eye. McDonald's Angel in Bakersfield. He clicked, half curious, and there it was. Grainy security footage of him at the drive-thru, fumbling for his wallet. Then her, Marissa Lopez, swiping her card, handing him the bag with a tired smile. The video had 500,000 views already, posted just hours ago by some local kid who'd nabbed it from the store's system. Comments scrolled fast. "This is why I love America. Hope he paid her back." Nate paused it, staring at her face. Dark hair pulled back, eyes sharp even through the fatigue. Lopez. The name hit him like a brick, dragging up a memory from 12 years back. He'd been a mess then, 38, fresh off a fight with his ex, Lily barely a teenager, drowning in whiskey at that same McDonald's. He'd yelled, swung at a trash can, ready to smash the window till a woman, short, stern, name tag Elena L., stepped out with a coffee. "Go home," she'd said, calm but firm. "You're better than this." No cops, no fuss. He'd sobered up, kept the company afloat because of that night. "Marissa Lopez," he muttered, setting the phone down, the bag still on his desk, coffee cold beside it. Could she be Elena's kid? Bakersfield wasn't that big. Same last name, same grit in her eyes. He'd never thanked Elena, never gone back. Too ashamed, too busy losing Lily to his damn oil rigs. He rubbed his jaw, the stubble rough under his fingers, and grabbed a notepad, scribbling her name. Tomorrow, he'd ask around, old contacts, maybe the diner crowd who knew everyone. Not to play hero, just to know. Back at the apartment, Marissa curled up on the couch, too tired to move the kids to bed. She didn't know about the video, didn't feel the $8.50 on hold in her account yet. All she knew was she'd made it through another night, and that was enough, for now. Marissa's kindness lit up the dark. Think it'll shine or fade? Hit subscribe and drop your guess in the comments. This road's just begun. The Bakersfield sun was a hammer by noon, pounding down on the cracked asphalt outside Marissa Lopez's apartment complex, a peeling stucco box off Truxtun Avenue, where the air smelled like exhaust and burnt grass. She slumped at the kitchen table, a chipped Formica relic she'd scored from a yard sale, counting out the last of her cash. $5.50, crumpled bills and a handful of change. Her phone buzzed non-stop beside her, notifications piling up from strangers. "You're an angel. Hope that guy paid you back," ever since Alicia had texted her that morning. "Girl, you're viral. Check YouTube." Marissa had watched the video on her cracked phone screen, the grainy footage of her swiping her card for that tired guy in the Chevy pickup. 2 million views now, climbing fast. Some local kid's caption screaming, "McDonald's angel in Bakersfield." She'd groaned, tossing the phone down. "Great," she muttered, rubbing her temples. "Just what I need. Everyone knowing I'm broke." Her shift tonight would be hell. Co-workers already side-eyeing her, customers pointing. She didn't want fame. She wanted rent money, new sneakers for Miguel, Zoe's meds. The apartment was quiet. Zoe and Miguel at school till 3, Mrs. Ortiz off at her cleaning job. Marissa sipped lukewarm water from a scratched glass, the fridge humming empty behind her. Half a gallon of milk, a stick of butter, some wilting carrots. She'd skipped breakfast, saved the last cereal for the kids, their bowls still in the sink, crusted with soggy flakes. Her stomach growled, but she ignored it, staring at the bills stacked on the counter. $700 due Friday, $50 for Zoe's inhaler, $25 if she could swing shoes at Walmart. The $8.50 she'd spent on that guy's meal stung now, a quiet ache she couldn't shake. A knock rattled the door, sharp, uneven, like someone wasn't sure they had the right place. Marissa frowned, wiping her hands on her jeans, and shuffled over, peering through the peephole. A man stood there, tall, broad, in a faded Carhartt jacket and jeans, gray stubble catching the light. She cracked the door, chain still on, her voice tight. "Yeah? Who are you?" "Name's Nate Carver," he said, low and rough, hands shoved in his pockets. "I'm the guy you paid for last night at McDonald's. Can we talk?" Her gut twisted, heat flushing her neck. She slid the chain off, opening the door wider, but stayed in the frame, arms crossed. "How'd you find me?" "Asked around," he said, shrugging, his hazel eyes steady but tired. "Buddy of mine knows Mrs. Ortiz. Said she lives next to a Marissa Lopez who works nights. Took a chance." He smelled faintly of motor oil and dust. His boots scuffed like he'd walked through a dozen oil yards. He didn't look like trouble, but she didn't trust easy, not after years of promises that turned to smoke. "Okay," she said, slow, stepping aside. "Come in, but I don't got much time." He ducked in, glancing around the cramped space, the sagging couch, the kids' drawings taped to the wall, the faint hum of traffic through the thin windows. Marissa shut the door, leaning against it, her heart thumping a little too fast. "So what's this about? You here to pay me back?" Nate pulled out a crumpled 10 from his pocket, holding it out. "Start with this. Covers the $8.50 plus a little, but that's not all. He hesitated, rubbing the back of his neck, then sat on the edge of the couch when she nodded him over. I saw the video. Everyone has. You didn't have to do that last night. Most wouldn't. She took the 10, folding it tight in her hand, her voice sharp. Yeah, well, I wasn't looking for a medal or a million likes. You looked beat. I've been there. She shrugged, sitting across from him at the table, the chair creaking under her. Why does it matter to you? He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, his jacket rustling. I run Carver Oil, small outfit, couple rigs around here. Need a receptionist, someone steady, good with people. Pays $16 an hour, 5 days a week. Thought of you. Marissa blinked, her breath catching. Wait, what? You're offering me a job? Why? You don't even know me. I know enough, he said, meeting her eyes, his voice low but firm. You're the kind who steps up. Swiping your card for a stranger says that. And? He paused, fishing a beat-up leather wallet from his pocket, flipping it open to a faded photo. A younger him, a teenage girl with curly hair, smiling at some fair. 12 years back, I was a wreck. Drunk, mad, ready to smash up that same McDonald's. Woman working there, name tag said Elena L., didn't call the cops. Gave me coffee, told me to go home, said I was better than that mess. Saved my ass, kept my company going. Her mouth went dry, the room tilting a little. Elena Lopez? She whispered, hands gripping the table's edge. That was my mom. Nate nodded, slow, like he'd half expected it. Figured it might be. Lopez ain't rare, but Bakersfield's small, and you've got her look in your eyes. She died, didn't she? Yeah, Marissa said, voice cracking, her fingers tracing a scratch in the formica. Cancer. 6 years ago. She used to tell me about this guy. Kind drunk, she called him. Said he just needed a push to get straight. That you? Guess so, he said, a faint, sad smile tugging his mouth. Never went back to thank her, too ashamed. Then too busy losing everything else. My daughter, Lily. She took off 8 years ago. Blamed me for picking oil over her. Haven't seen her since. He looked down at the photo, thumb brushing the edge. Your mom gave me a shot I didn't deserve. Figured I'd pass it on. Marissa stared at him, the $10 bill still clenched in her fist, her mind racing. $16 an hour, $640 a week. More than McDonald's, enough to cover rent, maybe start saving for Zoe's meds. But it didn't add up. Why her? Why now? Look, she said, leaning back, her voice hard. I don't need pity, or some debt you think you owe my mom. I'm not her, and I'm not your charity case. Not charity, Nate said, quick, sitting up straighter. A job, plain and simple. You're reliable, you're sharp. I saw it last night. I need that at the office. No handouts, just work. You in or not? She chewed her lip, the hum of the fridge filling the silence. The kids flashed in her head. Zoe coughing last week, Miguel dragging his feet in those busted shoes. She didn't trust Easy, didn't like owing anyone, but $5.50 wouldn't cut it till Friday, and McDonald's was wearing her down to nothing. What's the catch? She asked, eyes narrowing. No catch, he said, holding her gaze. Show up Monday, 8 a.m. Office is off Rosedale. You'll answer phones, file papers, learn as you go. I'm not going to hold your hand, but I'll give you a fair shot. That's it. She let out a breath, slow, the 10 crinkling as she smoothed it on the table. Fine. For the kids, not me. I'll try it. But if I suck, don't say I didn't warn you. You won't, he said, standing, tucking the wallet back in his pocket. See you Monday, Marissa Lopez. He headed for the door, boots thudding soft on the thin carpet, then paused, glancing back. Your mom, she was good people. You are too, The door clicked shut behind him, and Marissa sat there, staring at the $10, her chest tight. She didn't know if she believed him, if this was real or just another promise waiting to break. But $16 an hour was a rope, and she was drowning too hard to not grab it. Across town, Nate climbed into the Chevy, the engine coughing to life. He pulled out his phone, the video still open. 2.5 million views now. He didn't care about the likes, the comments. It was her, Marissa Lopez, swiping that card. Same steady hand Elena had when she'd shoved coffee at him 12 years back. He'd tracked her down through Pete, an old diner cook who knew half of Bakersfield, who'd pointed him to Mrs. Ortiz's neighbor. Not some grand plan, just a hunch, a debt he'd carried too long. He tossed the phone on the dash, the McMuffin wrapper crumpled beside it, and drove back to Carver Oil. Monday, he'd see if she showed. For now, he'd keep Lily's picture close, and that flicker of hope he hadn't felt in years. Marissa's got a stranger's offer. Think she'll climb or crash? Hit subscribe and tell me in the comments. This road's picking up speed. The Carver Oil office smelled like ink and stale coffee, a squat brick building off Rosedale Highway where the air conditioner rattled like it was on its last legs. Marissa Lopez sat at the reception desk, her first week on the job, fingers fumbling over a clunky keyboard as she tried to log a call from some rig manager barking about a late delivery. The screen blinked. Error, invalid entry. And she cursed under her breath. Come on, you stupid thing. Her McDonald's visor was gone, swapped for a thrift store blouse and jeans, but she felt just as out of place, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead like they were mocking her. It'd been 5 days since she'd taken Nate Carver's offer. $16 an hour, 5 days a week, a lifeline she couldn't say no to. Monday had started rough. She'd shown up at 8 a.m., palms sweaty, half expecting him to laugh and send her back to flipping burgers, but he'd just pointed her to the desk, handed her a stack of manuals thicker than her arm, and said, "Figure it out. Yell if you're stuck." No hand-holding, no pep talk, just a nod, and a door slammed shut to his office down the hall. The phone rang again. Third time in 10 minutes, and she snatched it up, her voice tight. "Carver Oil? This is Marissa. How can I help you?" A gruff voice rattled off a parts order, fast and clipped, and she scribbled it on a notepad, misspelling half the words. Gasket as gasket, valve as valve. She hung up, typed it into the system, and hit enter. Another error. "Damn it," she muttered, shoving the chair back, the wheels squeaking on the worn linoleum. "You okay up there, Angel?" Tina called from the back, her voice dripping with something Marissa couldn't quite pin. Amusement, maybe, or spite. Tina was the accountant, mid-40s, with a smoker's rasp and a permanent smirk. One of the 5 staff who'd been eyeing Marissa like she'd stolen their lunch since day one. The nickname had stuck fast. McDonald's Angel. Ever since Pete, the warehouse guy, had blabbed about the viral video over coffee Tuesday morning. 2 million views had turned into 3, and now every rig driver who walked in grinned at her like she was some saint they'd seen on their phone. "Yeah, fine," Marissa shot back, not looking up, her cheeks burning. She didn't need their crap. She needed this job. Rent was due tomorrow. $700 she'd barely scraped together with her last McDonald's check and Nate's $10. And Miguel's shoes were one rain away from falling apart. But the whispers followed her. She's just here 'cause of that video. Nate's got a soft spot for sob stories. And every typo, every missed call, felt like proof they were right. The front door swung open, boots thudding, and Nate stepped in, his Carhartt jacket dusted with dirt from the yard. He nodded at her, carrying a stack of invoices, his face lined and tired. "Phone's busy today?" he asked, dropping the papers on her desk with a soft thump. "Yeah," she said, pushing the notepad toward him, her handwriting a mess. 3 orders. Think I got 'em in, but this thing keeps screwing up." She tapped the monitor, her voice low, braced for a lecture. He glanced at the screen, then the pad, squinting. Close enough. Gaskets, not gaskets. But they'll figure it out back there. Takes time. You'll get it. He didn't smile, didn't pat her shoulder, just headed for his office, the door clicking shut behind him. No yelling, no firing her on the spot, but no warmth either. Just that flat, steady tone that left her wondering if he regretted this already. By Friday, she'd answered 50 calls, filed a dozen invoices wrong. Tina had to redo them, smirking the whole time, and scheduled Nate's meeting with a supplier for the wrong day, Tuesday instead of Thursday. He'd called her in at the end of the shift, the clock ticking toward 5 p.m., the office emptying out. She stood in his doorway, arms crossed, the room smelling like motor oil and old wood, his desk buried under maps and receipts. "Sit," he said, not looking up from a ledger, his pen scratching across the page. She dropped into the chair, the vinyl creaking, her stomach knotting. "You're slow," he started, blunt, setting the pen down. "Mixing up orders, missing stuff. What's the problem?" Her jaw tightened, heat crawling up her neck. "I'm trying. I don't know this crap. Phones, computers, I've never done it. You said I'd learn, but I'm drowning here." He leaned back, rubbing his face, the stubble rasping under his hand. "You are learning, just not fast enough for them out there." He jerked his head toward the hall where Tina's laugh echoed faintly. "They think I hired you 'cause of that video. Don't care about the rest." "Well, didn't you?" she snapped, sharper than she meant, her hands balling into fists. "You saw it, felt bad about my mom, threw me a bone. I'm not stupid. I know how this looks." His eyes narrowed, but he didn't bite back. "I hired you 'cause you're steady. Swiping that card showed me that. Not pity, not your mom, just you. But yeah, you're green, and they're pissed. Prove 'em wrong or don't. It's on you." He paused, then slid a paper across the desk. A map. Bozeman, Montana, circled in red. "Got something else. I'm selling Carver, moving back to my folks' place up there. Need a manager for a gas stop I own. Carver's Stop. $20 an hour, small crew. You in?" Marissa stared at the map, her breath catching. "Montana? You serious? I can't just... My kids' school. Everything's here." "Take 'em with you," he said, shrugging, like it was nothing. "I'll front a cheap rental, $500 a month, rest's on you. Schools are decent, quiet town, Bozeman's growing. Think about it." She laughed, short and bitter, shoving the map back. "Think about it? I don't even know where Bozeman is. I've got $5 left, Nate. Can't move across the country on a maybe. What if it flops? I'm not dragging Zoe and Miguel through that. I've been burned before." Her voice cracked, the memory of her ex flashing, promises of a fresh start, then nothing but an empty apartment and a note. He nodded, slow, folding the map back into his drawer. "Fair. Offer's there. Monday. Let me know. I'm not here to drag you anywhere." He stood, grabbing his jacket, the meeting over. "You're tougher than you think, Marissa. Just gotta see it." She didn't answer, just grabbed her purse and bolted, the Bakersfield heat hitting her like a wall as she stepped outside. The bus ride home was a blur. Dusty windows, the hum of the engine, her head spinning. $20 an hour, $800 a week, enough for rent, meds, shoes, maybe a little left over. But Montana? Uprooting the kids, leaving Mrs. Ortiz, the only safety net she had. Her ex had promised big too, new job in Fresno, better life, then bailed when Zoe was 6 months old. She couldn't risk that again. At home, Mrs. Ortiz had the kids on the couch, Zoe coloring, Miguel kicking his feet, his sneakers flopping open at the toe. "Mama!" Zoe yelled, waving a half-finished unicorn, but her grin faded fast. "You okay? You look mad." "Just tired, mija," Marissa said, forcing a smile, kissing her forehead. Miguel coughed, a dry rasp, and she winced. His inhaler was down to a few puffs. How was school? Fine, Miguel mumbled, scooting closer, his glasses sliding down his nose. Tommy said you're famous, but broke. Told him to shut up. Her chest tightened, the viral crap seeping into their world now too. Don't fight over that. It's nothing, she said, ruffling his hair. But it wasn't nothing. Tommy was right, and it stung. She tucked them in later, the couch creaking under her as she sat alone, staring at the $5.50 on the table. Nate's words echoed, tougher than you think, but all she felt was fragile, stretched too thin to snap. She grabbed her phone, dialed his office number from the card he'd left. Straight to voicemail, his gruff voice. Carver, leave a message. Hey, it's Marissa, she said, her voice shaking. That Montana thing. If I go, you better not let us starve. I'll tell you Monday. She hung up, heart pounding, not sure if she'd just made a promise or a mistake. Back at Carver Oil, Nate listened to the message after hours, the office dark except for his desk lamp. He replayed it twice, her voice raw, real. Good, he muttered, shutting it off, grabbing his keys. She'd fight. He'd seen it in Elena, saw it in her now. Monday he'd push, but not too hard. For now, he drove home, Lily's photo still in his wallet, a quiet hope flickering somewhere deep. Marissa's cracking under the weight. Think she'll run or stay? Hit subscribe and drop your take in the comments. This road's getting rough. The Montana wind hit like a slap, cutting through Marissa Lopez's thrift store jacket as she hauled the last box from the U-Haul into the little wood frame house on the edge of Bozeman. It was a far cry from Bakersfield's dust and heat, snow dusting the gravel yard, pine trees looming dark against a gray sky, the air sharp with cold and sap. The house was small, 2 bedrooms and a sagging porch. $500 a month Nate Carver had fronted from his pocket, wired straight to the landlord with a gruff, "Pay me back when you can." She'd taken the leap, quit McDonald's, packed the kids and their beat-up couch into a rental truck, drove 16 hours north with $200 left after gas and a motel stop in Idaho. It had been 2 weeks since she'd called Nate from that Bakersfield apartment, her voice shaking into his voicemail. Monday, she'd walked into Carver Oil, chin up, and said, "I'm in, but if this flops, I'm gone." He'd nodded, handed her a map and a key, said, "Carver's stop, north end of town. Start next week." No promises, no fanfare, just a chance she'd grabbed because Zoe's cough was getting worse and Miguel's shoes wouldn't last another rain. Mrs. Ortiz had hugged her goodbye, tears in her eyes, and slipped her a $20 bill. "For luck, mija." Marissa still felt it in her pocket, a thin lifeline she hadn't spent yet. Carver's stop was a weathered gas station off Main Street, a single pump, a tiny store with a flickering neon sign, and a gravel lot that crunched under her sneakers. She'd started Monday, $20 an hour to manage it, keep the pump running, stock the shelves, handle 3 part-timers who barely looked at her. The first day, she'd miscounted the register by $15, the ancient machine jamming every time she punched in a sale. "You sure you know what you're doing?" grumbled Hank, a gray-haired cashier who'd worked there 10 years, his voice thick with Montana drawl. She'd fumbled. "I'll figure it out." But her hands shook as she recounted the cash, the till short again by closing. Zoe and Miguel loved it, though. New school, smaller classes, a teacher who'd gotten them free lunches through some local program. "Mama, it snowed!" Zoe had yelled that first morning, dragging Miguel outside to stomp in it, his sneakers leaving wet tracks back to the porch. Marissa had smiled, but her chest tightened. Those shoes wouldn't cut it here, and Zoe's inhaler was down to a week's worth. The $20 an hour was more than Bakersfield, but rent ate half, groceries took another chunk, and she was still playing catch-up from the move. Nate swung by Friday, his Chevy kicking up gravel as he pulled in, jacket zipped against the cold. "How's it going?" he asked, leaning on the counter, eyeing the stack of receipts she'd scribbled on. Half the numbers crossed out, her handwriting a mess. "Rough," she said, shoving the pile aside, the register beeping as she voided another sale. "Hank quit yesterday. Said I'm too slow. Pump jammed twice, and I'm off by $10 every night. I'm trying, Nate, but this ain't my thing." He nodded, slow, picking up a receipt, squinting at it. "Takes time. Hank was an ass anyway, been coasting for years. You'll get it. Watch me." He stepped behind the counter, punched in a mock sale. Coffee, $2, his thick fingers steady on the keys, the drawer popping open clean. "See? Hit total first, then cash. You're overthinking it." She tried it. Coffee, $2, fingers slipping, but it worked, the receipt spitting out crisp. "Okay," she muttered, "but I'm still screwing up everything else. Lisa, she's the morning girl, says I ordered too much milk and it's expiring tomorrow." "Dump it and learn," he said, shrugging, no edge in his voice. "You're green. Takes a year to run a place like this smooth. I'm not firing you over milk." He grabbed a broom from the corner, swept a pile of tracked-in dirt, casual, like he wasn't the boss, or a millionaire, for that matter. "Kid settling in?" "Yeah," she said, softening a little, leaning on the counter. "They like the snow. School's good. Zoe's coughing less, cleaner air, I guess. But I'm barely keeping up. Rent's paid, but shoes, meds. It's tight." "Figured," he said, setting the broom down. "Got a coat in the truck. Lily's old one, too small for her now. Take it for Zoe. And there's a thrift shop on 7th. Cheap stuff. Good boots." He didn't look at her, just pulled a rag from his pocket, wiped a smudge off the counter. She bristled, arms crossing. "I don't need handouts. I'll pay for what I can." "Not a handout," he said, sharp, meeting her eyes. "Just stuff I don't use. Take it or don't." He turned, headed for the door, then paused. "Swing by my place tonight, 6 p.m., up on Bridger Drive. Coffee, talk. Bring the kids if you want." She nodded, reluctant, watching him climb into the Chevy and rumble off. That night, she drove their rattling Corolla up the hill, Zoe and Miguel in back, giggling over a snowman they'd half-built, her hands tight on the wheel. Nate's place was a low ranch house, wood siding weathered gray, a stack of firewood under the eaves. Smoke curled from the chimney, the air thick with pine and frost as she knocked, the kids shivering beside her. He opened the door, jacket off, flannel sleeves rolled up, the warmth of a wood stove spilling out. "Come in," he said, stepping aside. The room simple. Worn couch, a coffee table scarred with rings, a shelf of photos and oil rig models. Zoe plopped by the fire, Miguel poking at a model, while Marissa hovered near the door, her boots dripping meltwater. "Coffee?" he asked, pouring 2 mugs from a chipped pot, the smell bitter and strong. She nodded, took one, the heat seeping into her cold hands as she sat across from him at the table. "You're doing all right," he started, sipping his, the mug clinking soft against the wood. "Stop beating yourself up. It's a month, not a year." "Feels like a year," she said, voice low, glancing at the kids, Zoe giggling, Miguel asking, "Does this spin?" "I'm messing up everything. Hank's gone. Lisa's mad. I can't count straight. Why'd you pick me for this?" He set the mug down, leaning back, his eyes drifting to a photo on the shelf. Him, younger, with a curly-haired girl, maybe 16, smiling at some lake. "Lily," he said quiet, like the name hurt. "My daughter took off 8 years ago. I was a shit dad. Worked the rigs till midnight, missed her games, her fights with her mom. She blamed me when we split, rightly so. Haven't heard from her since." He looked at Marissa, steady. Your mom, Elena, she saw me at my worst, drunk, swinging at trash cans, gave me coffee, sent me home, kept me from jail. I pulled it together 'cause of that, kept Carver going. You're like her, tougher than you know. Her throat tightened, the mug warm against her palms. Mom died broke. Cancer ate her up 6 years back. She helped everyone, me, you, half the damn block, and got nothing for it. I don't want to end up like that, Nate. Scraping by, no matter how tough I am. You won't, he said, firm, leaning forward. You're here, took the jump, brought your kids. That's more than I ever did for Lily. He paused, voice dropping. I'm selling Carver Oil, done with it. Staying here, this house, help me find her. Stay, run the stop. You're not failing, you're starting. She stared at him, the fire crackling behind her, Zoe's laugh cutting through the quiet. Find her how? She's gone 8 years, you don't even know where she is. Don't, he admitted, rubbing his jaw, the stubble rasping. But I've got money, time now. Hired a guy last year, nothing yet. You're good with people. Maybe you'll see something I don't. Marissa set the mug down, her hands trembling just enough to notice. I'll stay. For the kids, for me. But I'm not promising miracles. I can barely manage a gas pump, let alone your daughter. Fair, he said, a faint smile breaking through, the first she'd seen. Just keep showing up. That's enough. She nodded, slow, the weight shifting, not lighter but different. The kids ran over, Miguel tugging her sleeve. Can we build another snowman tomorrow? And she laughed, rough but real. Yeah, mijo. Tomorrow. Nate watched, quiet, Lily's photo glowing soft in the firelight. And for a second, Marissa felt something crack open. Not hope, not yet, but a bend in the road she hadn't seen coming. Marissa's bending, not breaking. Think she'll find her footing? Hit subscribe and share your guess in the comments. This road's turning sharp. The Bozeman winter dug in hard by mid-December, snow piling against the cracked windows of Carver's stop, the gas pump outside whining under a crust of ice. Marissa Lopez hunched behind the counter, her thrift store coat zipped tight, breath fogging in the chilly store as she counted the register, 212.47 talons, off by $8 again. Her hands shook, not just from the cold, but from the knot in her gut that had been tightening for weeks. 2 months managing the place, and it was falling apart faster than she could patch it. Customers dwindling, shelves half empty. The last part-timer, Lisa, texting her resignation yesterday. Sorry, can't deal. Good luck. She slammed the drawer shut, the clang echoing in the quiet, and rubbed her eyes, mascara smudging onto her knuckles. $20 an hour sounded good back in Bakersfield. $800 a week before taxes. But it wasn't enough. Not here. Rent took $500, groceries another $200. Zoe's inhaler $40 after insurance. Miguel's boots $25 from the thrift shop Nate had pointed her to. Gas for the Corolla, heat for the house, a busted heater in the store she couldn't fix. It all added up, leaving her with $30 in her account and a week till payday. The kids were okay. School was free, lunches covered. But she saw it in their eyes. The way Zoe hugged her tighter, Miguel asked less about new toys. They felt it too. The door jingled, boots crunching snow, and Nate Carver stepped in, his Carhartt dusted white, a thermos under his arm. Damn cold out there, he said, setting it on the counter, unscrewing the cap. Coffee steam curling up, sharp and bitter. How's today? Bad, she snapped, shoving the receipts toward him, a messy pile of scribbles and voids. Down to me in the pump. Lisa quit, says I'm a mess. Gas prices jumped, $3.50 a gallon. Nobody's stopping. I'm short every night, and this heater's dead. She kicked the unit under the counter, a dull thud ringing out. You said I could do this. I'm failing, Nate. Hard. He poured coffee into a styrofoam cup, handed it to her, his face lined but steady. Lisa was flaky. Her loss. Prices are up everywhere. Folks'll come back when it settles. You're not failing, just learning. He sipped his own, leaning on the counter, the wood creaking under his weight. Takes a year, told you that. She took the cup, the heat stinging her cold hands, but her voice rose, sharp. A year? I don't have a year. Zoe's coughing again. Meds are low. Miguel's boots are too tight already. I'm drowning here, and you're just standing there like it's fine. She slammed the cup down, coffee sloshing over the rim, her chest heaving. You dragged me out here, said I'd make it. I'm not. Look at this place. Nate's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing, but he didn't flinch. I didn't drag you. You came, said you'd try, and you're still here. I'm not your dad, Marissa. Can't fix every damn thing. Figure it out. He set his cup down, hard, the thermos rattling, and turned for the door, snow swirling in as he stepped out. Figure it out, she yelled after him, her voice cracking, the door slamming shut behind him. That's it? I'm screwed, and you walk away? She sank onto the stool, head in her hands, the store silent except for the wind rattling the windows. Her mom's face flashed up. Elena, thin and gray, coughing in that Bakersfield hospice bed, still smiling, still telling her, You're enough, mija. But she wasn't. Mom had died broke, good to everyone but herself. And Marissa saw the same road stretching out, cold and empty. She worked the rest of the shift alone. 3 customers, $50 in gas, a pack of gum, locking up at 8 p.m., the Corolla sputtering to life in the lot. At home, Zoe and Miguel were on the couch, Mrs. Jensen from next door, white-haired kind, watching them while Marissa pulled the late shift. They're angels, Mrs. Jensen said, patting her arm, shuffling out into the dark. Marissa fed them mac and cheese from a box, $1.50 50 cents at the dollar store, and tucked them in, Zoe whispering, Mama, you're sad again. Just tired, mija, she lied, kissing her forehead. Miguel already snoring, his glasses crooked on the pillow. She sat at the kitchen table after, the house creaking in the wind, counting coins, $5 in quarters, a dime, 3 pennies. Not enough for gas tomorrow, let alone meds. She'd yelled at Nate, but he was right. She'd come here, chasing something better, and now it was slipping through her fingers. Next morning, Saturday, she dragged the kids to the stop. Zoe in Lily's old coat, Miguel in a hat Mrs. Jensen had knit. Stay inside, she told them, unlocking the store, the heater still dead. Her breath fogging as she stalked what little she had. Chips, coffee filters, a case of soda past its date. Zoe tugged her sleeve, eyes bright. Mama, can we do something fun? Like dancing? Like at school? Marissa forced a smile, too tired to argue. Sure, mija. What's the plan? Music and stuff. Make people come, Zoe said, bouncing, Miguel nodding. And science, like my volcano. She hesitated. Fun wouldn't fix this, but their grins cracked her open, just a little. Okay, she said, digging out an old Bluetooth speaker from the back, pairing it to her phone, some lo-fi playlist she'd downloaded for free. Zoe twirled, giggling, Miguel setting up a vinegar baking soda volcano on a crate with red food coloring from home. She scribbled a sign, Saturday fun, coffee 50C, kids day, taped it to the pump, and propped the door open, music spilling out into the cold. A pickup slowed, then parked. An older guy, flannel and boots, peering in. What's this? He asked, nodding at Zoe spinning, Miguel's fizzing mess. Just something for the kids, Marissa said, shrugging, pouring him coffee from the pot she'd brewed. 50 cents. He grinned, tossed her $1. Keep it, and stayed, chatting about the weather, the pump prices. Another car pulled in, then a mom with 2 boys drawn by the noise, $10 in gas, a bag of chips. By noon, she'd made $40. Gas, coffee, a few sodas. Not much, but more than yesterday's $12. Nate rolled up at 1 p.m., Chevy crunching gravel, his thermos in hand again. He stepped in, eyebrows lifting at Zoe twirling. Miguel explaining his eruption to a kid with a buzz cut. "What's this?" he asked, leaning on the counter, coffee untouched. "Something stupid," Marissa said, voice flat, counting the till. $48 now, still short. "Kids wanted fun, thought it'd bring people. Barely covers the gas they burned getting here." He watched her, quiet, then grabbed a broom, swept the tracked-in snow. "Not stupid, smart. They're here, ain't they?" He nodded at the mom, the flannel guy lingering by the pump. "Takes time. Build on it." She snorted, slamming the drawer shut, her eyes burning. "Build on what? I'm not good enough for this, Nate. Look at me. No help, no money, screwing up every day. You picked the wrong damn person. Should have left me in Bakersfield." He set the broom down, stepping closer, his voice low, rough. "I picked you 'cause you don't quit. Swiped that card when you had nothing. Moved here when you were scared shitless. I lost Lily 'cause I didn't try. Walked away when she needed me. You're still here, Marissa. Fighting. That's more than I ever did." He gripped her shoulder, quick, firm, then let go. "You're not failing. You're starting." She froze, tears spilling hot down her cheeks, swiping them fast with her sleeve. "It hurts," she whispered, voice breaking, Zoe's laugh cutting through the haze. "Trying this hard. It hurts, and I'm scared I'll lose it all anyway." "Good," he said, softer, grabbing his thermos. "Means it's real. Keep going. I'll be around." He headed out, snow crunching under his boots, leaving her standing there, the till still short, the store still cold, but something shifting, sharp, fragile, like a spark catching in the dark. That night she locked up, $52 total. Not enough, but a start. She drove home, Zoe and Miguel chattering about the volcano, and sat at the table after they slept, the coins still there. $5.13. "I'll stay," she muttered, to the empty room, to herself. "But if I crash, Nate, I'm not begging you to pick me up." The wind howled outside, and she clutched the dime, its edges biting her palm, a tiny promise she wasn't sure she could keep. Marissa's sparking or sinking. Think she'll burn out or blaze? Hit subscribe and drop your take in the comments. This road's on fire. The Bozeman spring crept in slow, melting the snow into muddy patches around Carver's stop, the air softening with pine and wet earth by late April. Marissa Lopez stood behind the counter, counting the register. $287.32. Spot on for once, the drawer sliding shut with a satisfying click. 4 months since that shaky Saturday fun day, and the place wasn't thriving. But it was breathing, steady customers trickling in, a new part-timer, Jenny, stocking shelves with a quiet hum. The heater still rattled, but she'd learned to kick it just right, and the pump hadn't jammed in weeks. She'd built something, small but real. $20 an hour stretched tight, but she'd clawed her way to $150 in savings after rent. $500, groceries, $200, Zoe's meds, $40, and Miguel's new boots, $30 from a thrift haul. Saturday fun had stuck. Once a month, Zoe danced to lo-fi beats, Miguel showed off vinegar volcanoes or paper rockets, and locals stopped by, dropping $50, $60 some days. It wasn't much, but it kept the lights on, kept her from drowning. The kids were growing, Zoe's cough fading in the cleaner air, Miguel's glasses swapped for a sturdier pair from a school fund Mrs. Jensen had tipped her off about. Nate Carver rolled in that afternoon, his Chevy crunching gravel, a thermos under his arm as always. "Good haul today?" he asked, pouring coffee into her chipped mug, the steam curling up sharp and warm. "Decent," she said, leaning on the counter, her thrift store sweater soft against her arms. "Up $10 from last Friday. Jenny's a keeper, doesn't gripe like Hank." She took the mug, sipping, the bitterness grounding her. "Still tight, but we're eating." He nodded, slow, setting his thermos down, his eyes drifting to the window where Zoe twirled outside, Miguel kicking a pine cone. "Told you. Takes time. You're steady now." His voice was rough, but softer than that winter night she'd yelled at him, tears streaming, ready to bolt. He'd been around since fixing the pump once, dropping off a bag of coats, never pushing, just there. The door jingled, and a woman stepped in, mid-20s, curly brown hair spilling from a knit cap, jeans and a flannel shirt loose over a thin frame. She carried a canvas bag, her boots scuffing the floor, and stopped short, staring at Nate. "Dad?" she said, voice low, cracking just enough to turn the room still. Nate froze, coffee sloshing as he set the mug down hard, his face paling. "Lily?" he whispered, stepping forward, hands half raised like he wasn't sure she was real. Marissa's breath caught, her mug clinking against the counter as she straightened, Zoe and Miguel peering in from the door, wide-eyed. "Yeah," the woman, Lily, said, swallowing, her hazel eyes flicking from Nate to Marissa, then back. "Heard you were here. Pete from Bakersfield called a buddy up in Missoula, said you sold Carver, moved. Saw that video, McDonald's angel, figured it was you behind it." She shifted, awkward, clutching the bag tighter. "Been teaching in Bozeman, 3rd grade, 2 years now. Didn't know how to find you till then." Nate's throat bobbed, his voice hoarse. 8 years, kid. I looked, hired a guy, nothing. You're here?" He stepped closer, slow, like she might vanish, and she nodded, tears brimming but not falling. "Was mad," she said, sharp, then softer. "You picked oil over me. Mom, too. Took off at 18, didn't look back. But I saw her, Marissa, in that clip. And you, and I don't know. Wanted to see." She glanced at Marissa, a faint smile tugging her mouth. "You're the angel, huh?" Marissa laughed, rough, wiping her hands on her jeans. "Just a dumb name. Paid for his coffee once. Got me here." She nodded at Nate, her chest tight, watching him. Shoulders slumped, eyes wet, a man she'd never seen break. He pulled a worn wallet from his pocket, flipped it open, and slid out a nickel. Old, scratched, glinting dull in the light. "This," he said, holding it out to Lily, his voice trembling. "Your grandma gave it to me. Elena Lopez, Marissa's mom. 12 years back, I was drunk, smashing crap at her McDonald's. She didn't call the cops, gave me this, said, 'Live decent, you're worth it.' Kept it ever since, kept me going." He pressed it into Lily's hand, closing her fingers around it. "Found you 'cause of Marissa. Her in that video got Pete talking." Lily stared at the coin, then at Marissa, her breath hitching. "Your mom, she's why he's here?" "Yeah," Marissa said, voice thick, stepping around the counter. "Died 6 years ago. Cancer. Helped everyone. Even him, never asked for nothing. Didn't know till he told me." She wiped her eyes, quick. The kids slipping in, Zoe tugging her sleeve, Miguel watching silent. Lily nodded, slow, pocketing the nickel, her shoulders easing. "I'm sorry." "About her and Dad." I'm here. Not promising much, but I'm here. She hugged him, quick, stiff, then softer. Nate's arms wrapping tight, a sob catching in his throat. Marissa turned away, busying herself with the register, giving them space, her own tears burning. Zoe whispered, "Mama, who's she?" And Marissa knelt, pulling them close. His girl. Lost her a while. Found her now. Like us, huh? They nodded, Zoe hugging her neck, Miguel's glasses fogging up. 5 years later, Carver's stop smelled like fresh coffee and motor oil, the neon sign buzzing steady over a gravel lot patched with new asphalt. Marissa Lopez, 39 now, stood behind the counter, her dark hair tied back, a gray hoodie soft from wear replacing the thrift store coat. The store wasn't fancy, same pump, same shelves, but it was hers. Nate had sold it to her last year, $50,000 on a handshake deal, $200 a month till it was paid. No rush, he'd said. You earned it, he'd told her, moving into a smaller place down the road with Lily nearby. She ran it lean, $25 an hour now, after haggling suppliers down, enough for a 3-bedroom rental, $800, groceries, meds, school clothes. Zoe, 14, taught a free dance class out back every Saturday. 10 kids twirling to a battered speaker, tips in a jar sometimes hitting $20. Miguel, 12, rigged science projects with the local boys, solar cars, bottle rockets, his grades topping the class, a scholarship fund Lily'd helped him snag. Nate stopped by that afternoon, gray hair thinning, a thermos swapped for a cane after a knee tweak last fall. Looks good, he said, nodding at the fresh paint on the wall. A nickel Marissa had stenciled big and bold after Lily'd given her the coin back. Busy today? Steady, she said, pouring him coffee from the pot, the mug warm in her hands. Up $30 from last week. Zoe's class brings him in. She smiled, faint, watching Lily pull up outside, her Subaru kicking gravel, a toddler, Mateo, 2, waving from the car seat. Lily stepped in, Mateo on her hip, his curls bouncing. Hey, Marissa, brought this monster to say hi. She grinned, setting him down, the boy toddling to Nate, who scooped him up, laughing rough. Found a place downtown. Teaching's good. Matt's at the garage now. Her husband, a mechanic she'd met 3 years back, steady and quiet like her. Marissa nodded, leaning on the counter, the nickel stencil glinting in the corner of her eye. Heard from Pete. Says Bakersfield's still hot as hell. Glad we're here, Lily said, ruffling Mateo's hair, then paused, pulling a crumpled nickel from her pocket. Newer, shinier than Elena's. Kid at school gave me this, for the class pet fund. Thought you'd like it. She tossed it to Marissa, who caught it, the metal cool against her palm. She laughed, soft, tucking it into the jar by the register. A dozen coins clinking inside. Kids' tips, small promises piling up. 1 nickel started this, she said, glancing at Nate, then Lily, Mateo giggling between them. Nah, Nate said, setting the boy down, his cane tapping the floor. You did? Took guts to swipe that card, guts to stay. He met her eyes, steady. Rest just followed. Lily nodded, smiling crooked. Guess we're all here 'cause of it. Mom's coin, your road. Marissa looked out the window. Zoe twirling with a girl in braids, Miguel showing off a fizzing bottle, the pump humming as a truck pulled in. She'd left Bakersfield broke, scared, expecting nothing. Found this instead. Not riches, but a life. Scratched out slow. Nate handed her a folded paper as he left, a $10,000 check. For Elena, he said, quiet. Pay her back. Build something. She took it, tears pricking, a nod her only thanks. That night, she hung the nickel on the wall next to Elena's stencil and stood back, the store quiet, the kids asleep at home with Mrs. Jensen. "Thanks, Mom," she whispered, the coin glinting soft. A road she'd never planned, a home she'd never dreamed, one nickel at a time. Marissa's road found its end. How's this hit you? Hit subscribe and share your fave twist in the comments. Thanks for riding this with us.